Welcome into a Thanksgiving edition of Three True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher, and thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. We are here to break down all things college basketball, and that does not stop just because everyone has a couple of days off work. So, if you're listening to this on the way to celebrate with friends and family, please enjoy the conversation we're about to have. If you're enjoying this on the way back, hope you had a great holiday. Hope you had some good food and enjoyed your time off. If you're listening to this throughout the weekend, that applies to you as well. Anyone is welcome anytime here on Three True Values. Really, just very thankful to be building this community, continuing to put out episodes. So thankful for you guys, the listeners, who have continued to show up and follow my work, not just here on the podcast, but my writing as well at On3, the bracketology as it has continued, NBA draft coverage that we have done, and now branching even into some recruiting coverage that we do with Jamie Shaws here on Tuesdays. Thank you to all of you and to everyone who has contributed throughout the time. This Thanksgiving episode, of course, we record usually on Thursdays. We're recording ahead here, pre-recording on a Wednesday, so we're not going to get into the results of the all of the Feast Week events that are going on, but we're going to talk about Feast Week as a whole and where it has gone here in this opening segment. In the second segment, we're going to talk about some of the really impressive performances so far, maybe the overachievers, teams that have surprised us, and a couple of the teams that have disappointed so far, some that we're waiting to see that breakout, waiting to see it click the way that we thought it would in the preseason. And then we're going to get out of here with a couple of Q&A questions, just a couple of questions that I have been pitched over the course of the season so far. Love taking your questions. If you have more questions, please submit them on social media. I'm at JDFletch3 everywhere. Submit them here in the comments. If you have my number, text it to me. Always happy to have a dialogue going about the sport, about these players, and everything that we are watching throughout the course of the season. But before we get into all of those topics, I just want to talk for a second about Thanksgiving and kind of how special this specific episode is for me every time that I get to record it. Every year as we get towards Thanksgiving, first of all, it's all about family, thinking about waking up earlier than I ever would to help my mom cook, clean, go out, get the paper so that we can look at the Black Friday ads while we wait for things in the oven, while we switch things in and out as it's time to cook each dish so that it all lines up and we can have our meal in the middle of the day. So this holiday is one of my favorite ones to celebrate, always making multiple pies with my mom. I am always responsible for the Oreo pie specifically, and then from there, help out with everything else, making a lot of the side dishes throughout the day as well. But that, of course, early on in my podcasting career, when I was working with Luke Ratliff, who, if you've been following me for a while, you know that Luke and I hosted a show covering Alabama basketball while we were both students there. He, of course, the leader of the student section, really the heart and soul of the Alabama basketball fan base. And throughout the course of recording that podcast, we came up with a couple of different bits, a couple of different segments that we would go through. And one of them was asking our guests a series of questions. And for our Thanksgiving episode, we had on Drew Carter, who is a friend of the show, and another guy who was covering Alabama around that time, now, of course, doing great things with the Boston Celtics radio team. But it was very interesting, a segment that we recorded in which we talked about our favorite Thanksgiving foods. Of course, we also talked about our favorite colors at one point. There were all kinds of bits that we would do, but that episode in particular just always sticks in my mind, especially this time of year, thinking about how much we miss Luke, everything that he meant to that fan base, to everyone who got the chance to be around him, how much fun recording those podcasts really were. It was it was invaluable for me, not just as a podcaster and learning how to do this, learning how to work with a co-host, but just the time that we got to spend before and after episodes always was special to spend. So thankful for all of those times during this time of year. As we get into today's show, as we talk about the basketball that is at hand, again, we are recording this ahead of time, so we are not going to talk about results from the Players Era Festival, from Maui, from Atlantis, any of those. But what we are going to do is we're going to talk about this discourse that has been happening throughout the week. It's been really interesting to follow. A lot going on around college basketball, particularly online. Some fans pushing back against the Players Era Festival for a couple of different reasons. So we're going to go through them here, hopefully one at a time. This is a conversation that does kind of overlap, though. So if we get a little bit off topic, we're going to try to rein it back in. Of course, as we know, the Players Era Festival has many of the biggest teams in college basketball this season. They have landed a loaded field, and then they go into a format which features 2 games against a random variation of opponents and a championship game. So everyone plays 3 by the time it is all said and done. Your final opponent is determined by the results of those first 2. I want to talk first, though, about this conversation about the Players Era Festival, the Maui Invitational, the Battle for Atlantis. We've got the Baja Mar, ESPN Invitational, all of these events going on across America during Feast Week. And it's true that the Players Era Festival has stolen a lot of the shine off of those others. And fans clearly frustrated a little bit by that. And I understand it. We're in this NIL era. We're in this era where it feels like college sports has become more and more about the money and not about the fan experience. Sometimes not even about the player experience as much about the players' paychecks. So this is such an interesting discussion where the Maui Invitational, it costs these teams money to go out there. Now, you can argue that they get some value back in the exposure that they receive, in the experiences that they're able to get, team bonding that goes on throughout that process, but it costs them a good chunk of money to fly out there and participate in that tournament during Thanksgiving week. The Players Era Festival, on the other hand, is offering to give money to these schools in order to come. So right off the bat, it becomes a more attractive opportunity for these programs, particularly the top programs, because of the NIL component. The winner of this tournament is going to get a large chunk of NIL money distributed to their players. That is something that these coaches are having to promise, that they are having to pitch against other schools. So when you can offer a recruit and say, look, here is how much NIL money you will be receiving, and the opportunity at a bonus paycheck if you go win when we play this tournament. That is an added advantage that you now have, being able to pitch this player that if he comes in and wins right away, he can make even more money to play college basketball. On the other hand, there is something lost in the tradition of the Maui Invitational, the tradition that used to be the Battle for Atlantis, the Baja Mar, what tradition it has, ESPN Invitational, Charleston, all of these MTE events that we became so used to during Feast Week. We're seeing lesser teams now playing in those events. The Maui Invitational used to be the premier event that the top teams all were seeking out. And so much so that the Maui Invitational has a rotation of how many years you can be in it. And then you have to be out of it. And then you can come back in after a set number of years. That's how many teams that they had wanting to come be part of that bracket and participate in the event. Think about what it's done for Chaminade to be on that stage every few years and be able to showcase their program. But you're losing a lot of that because with the Players Era Festival, they can handpick more and more of the top teams. And they've gone beyond 8 teams being brought into this event, playing 3 games still, which brings us to conversation number 2. And this one is difficult to try to figure out because the Players Era Festival, to be at its maximum, to make the most money that they can, to make this the biggest event that they can, I think they need more than 8 teams. Because don't forget that they are still putting on an event with the idea of making money themselves. So if they are going to offer where Maui is saying, come pay your way and you will get exposure, we will make money off of the event itself. The Players Era Festival is saying, we will dish out money to each of these teams that participates and more money to those who have success. So the more teams they can get in, the more they maximize their opportunity to make that money back. So to have 16 teams in this field makes a lot of sense for the Players Era Festival and their goal to try to become sustainable, because that was the biggest question about this event in its first iteration. Is this going to be sustainable for them to give away money in a setting where every other event is taking in money? How do you then maximize your ability to also benefit? Well, the answer is probably more teams. The problem becomes if you are capped at 3 games, if that's the amount of games that you are going to play, you cannot have a bracket system unless you are going to predetermine that this is the A bracket and this is the B bracket. And that becomes dangerous, of course, because you run the risk of alienating certain teams. If I want to take my team to the Players Era Festival, but I find out that I'm going to be the top seed in the B bracket, well, now I'm less intrigued. I'm not getting to play the big name programs. I'm not getting even a chance at the big dollar figure that's at the end of this. I'm being told that I am in the B tier. I am playing teams that now, if I'm the top seed, or at least if I believe I'm the top seed, I'm playing teams that I believe are lesser than me. Well, that's not what I wanted to do in this event. I wanted a chance to raise my stock. So maybe I do go to another event. So you can't alienate them by creating 2 brackets. You don't have enough games available if you're only going to play 3, which is what many of these teams want to do. They don't want to go 4 straight days playing. Maybe you have to space it out, but then you're running up your cost again. So the only solution here is to set the bar at point differential or the margin of victory, whichever one you want to call it. I've seen some debate about that online. But then we run into point differential becoming controversial because of 2 factors. The first one being that it encourages running up the score in games and it benefits teams that had a lopsided strength of schedule in those opening rounds. We look no further than this year's event. UNLV was part of the event. Of course, it's being hosted in Las Vegas, so no big shock there. They would be part of this. But the fact of the matter is they are the only team in this field that was outside of kind of the power structure of NCAA tournament caliber teams. You then look at teams that got to face other opponents who were probably not up to par with that next kind of jump in tier of team. When you've got some of these elite teams in the field, and then a mixture of NCAA tournament caliber teams, a couple of bubble teams, and then one or two teams that are off the pace, it makes it harder and harder to create a fair representation using point differential. And then you get into a situation like in this year's where Alabama plays Gonzaga in the first day. Okay, that could very well be two of the three best teams in this event. So, first off, on day one, you're eliminating one of your three best teams from contention. You're sending them down to a lesser game because there's going to be at least 3 or 4 undefeated teams in this process. You're also decreasing the chance that either team is going to make it to that championship game, because by putting two really good teams together, your margin of victory is not likely to be a wide margin. So your point differential is going to be skewed versus a team that got to play a UNLV in the first round. Now, Gonzaga made it through, but they made it through because they won their second round game by about 40 points. So is that beneficial? Especially when, and this is point 2, that Gonzaga game came late at night. Now, in Las Vegas, it was a little bit earlier, but in terms of your general viewing audience, American sports are kind of based on the Eastern time zone, and then we work our way west from there. That's just the fact of the matter. That's just how it is, based on population density, and we move our way to the west. So it's got to be strange. Typically in a bracket setting, what you would do is you win or lose your game. You now know which side of the bracket you're going to. You can then scout the next game or the game before yours accordingly to have your assistants prepared for what is coming the next day. You're playing 2 days in a row, but you know, okay, we're going to play the winner of this game. So let's watch this game. Let's scout both teams. All right, now we have our notes on the winner. We're ready to go. But in this format, you can't do that. Your day 3 opponent is being determined by point differential and standings and all this league play stuff, but only across 2 games. So you're not getting a large sample size, and there's every opportunity that you don't even know who you're playing until close to midnight, beyond midnight Eastern, but of course they are all there in Las Vegas. Close to midnight, you then find out who you are going to play 12 hours from now. That just doesn't feel like you're set up for great success to have the highest level of play. So these are things that have to get worked out that, as I introed, do not have an easy solution. They're frustrating for fans. They're frustrating for people who are having to watch this. I'm sure the coaches are frustrated with not being able to game plan the way that they would like. You're already not recovering the way that you would fully like to, and now you don't get to game plan as well. It's a different kind of test for your team, but it's not one that translates down the road particularly well for you to then apply it moving forward. Like I said, in a bracket format, you can apply that to a conference tournament. You talk about the idea of having to scout ahead of time. You can apply that to the NCAA tournament. But this specific instance is just not something that you're going to run into again throughout the course of the season. So a lot that they've got to get figured out. And I do think that to wrap things up here in this segment, I think that we are losing something if we lose these historic college basketball events. I think that maybe what it takes is sponsorships, brands, NIL investment coming into the Maui Invitational, coming into the Baja Mar, and these other events that are going on, finding unique ways. And that's what this has been about. All of college sports, you have to adapt. Now, some of these places are just not in an advantageous position to adapt. But I do think that with the history that is behind some of these things, that we can move forward, we can continue to find people who care about the sport, who care about these events. And so I do have some optimism that we can get something back. I don't know if it'll ever get to where it was. Part of that will be determined by how successful the Players Era Festival is in adapting as well. Because they've come in and disrupted things. Now they have to maintain control. Otherwise, we can go back to where we were. But there's a lot to get sorted out. Fans obviously frustrated with some of the kinks in this system and in the loss of some tradition that we have had throughout the years. So it's something that college basketball has got to get fixed. It's not necessarily on the NCAA or any of these teams, definitely not on the players or coaches in any way, but the organizers who put these events together, the brands that are behind it, the donors who are contributing this money. It's on them to come to the table. If they value the Maui Invitational, they have to step up. If they value the Players Era Festival, they have to figure things out. We will see over time how this continues to play out. I don't think this topic is going away. It'll be back next year. We might do another episode on it next year. Regardless, though, it is here and it's going to be a disruptor for the sport. We'll be back right here on Three True Values, breaking down some of college basketball's impressive starts and some of the concerning starts right here on our Thanksgiving episode. Welcome back in here on Three True Values as we continue on our Thanksgiving episode. We're talking about some of the impressive and some of the not as impressive starts to the season. We're going to go quick here, but we do want to touch on some of the really hot starts across college basketball. That can't start anywhere else but Arizona. They pick up the win over Florida in their season opener. They have gone on to pick up more top 25 wins, even the first top 5 win of the season, knocking off UConn on the road against UConn. So a lot to like about Arizona so far. And I think maybe the scariest part to this point is that we haven't seen Braden Burries and Koa Pete put it all together in the same game yet. You look at a team that has a lot of veteran depth on it. You've got Tobe Awaka and Matthias Krivas in that front court. You've got the freshman upside. I just mentioned those two, but Dwayne Aristode is a guy who's shown some flashes, some pop there, who could continue to rise his way up into the mix as impact freshmen who are defining this college basketball season. Ivan Karchinkov, I think, has gone really under the radar with his impact. And then to add in Anthony Delorso to that mix as well on the wing, I have been incredibly impressed with Jaden Bradley being able to be the engine that makes a team go, bringing some veteran leadership to that backcourt, steadying things throughout the course of the game, and being an impact offensive player. He has grown a lot in his time in college basketball and continues to become a better and better player. This Arizona team, the sky is the limit. Look, they're up to number 2 in the AP poll now. I think that they have unquestionably the best resume in college basketball as we stand today. And they continue to build up each time that they go out there and play. We will see. They're going to take bumps and bruises. That part's for sure in today's college basketball. But they are right up there in the mix and have to be considered one of the best teams right now that we have. Gonzaga, another one. They have proved themselves. They have overcome the obstacles. They have beaten the early tests. Really impressed by what I've seen from Gonzaga. We've got a question about them in the mailbag segment coming up to finish today's show, so I won't go too deep into it, but man, have they been impressive. Really like what I've seen From this group, they've knocked off, of course, two teams already in this Players Era Festival. They already had picked up some good wins. They are really, really good according to the computers. The eye test checks out. They seem to have a lot of depth, in addition to some top end talent who can carry the team to big success. And the last impress that I want to put on here is the ACC as a whole. Had this conversation the other day with somebody that it has just been fun to watch the ACC. And that's something that I don't think we could say very often over the past couple of years. It was kind of Duke, and then is North Carolina good? Then you knew that Clemson was going to be an NCAA tournament team. And outside of that, there was nothing really to pique your interest across the board in the conference. But this year, that has completely changed. Syracuse has been very fascinating. Kyan Anthony having a hot start to his freshman campaign. They have the returners there. They've gotten off to a really good start so far in this season. So something to keep tracking there. Can they get things pointed the right direction? I look at Virginia. They've been really fun. Those international guys have made an immediate impact. The transfers as well look like they're starting to click. They play a fun brand of basketball this year under Ryan Odom. I look at Virginia Tech, the Avdalas story that has come out. Tobe Luwal also back. Can Mike Young get that thing going? I look at NC State, and they have Will Wade, everything that's going on there. Figuring out what the pecking order of that team is continues to be something that I'm very fascinated in. North Carolina overachieving. Caleb Wilson coming onto the scene very quickly here. Clemson's still in the mix. There's nothing wrong with what they've done so far. Even Florida State, with some big performances by Rob McCray, has gotten in there and played some fun basketball throughout the course of these early weeks. Really interested to see how this continues to play out. Don't want to leave out Wake Forest as well. Juke Harris has led the way as they've gotten some impressive results and some really heart-stopping results in their MTE event, the Baja Mar. So really, really exciting stuff out of the ACC. We'll see how it continues, how it moves forward into conference play. That's going to be exciting to see if these teams can keep the momentum going, take that in, and have some good rivalry matchups, some good conference showdowns throughout the course of this season coming down the stretch as we look and evaluate these teams to see if they're in the NCAA tournament picture. That'll add some extra excitement, a conference that's known for having a lot of teams represented, but hasn't in the past few years. We just talked about it. Really, two locks, a third one on the bubble has really been kind of the conversation over these past few years and is not the typical ACC that we have come to know. For every impressive team, there's always one that's kind of lagging behind that we're waiting to see more from. And this year, I think that is exemplified by Kentucky. And we talked about Kentucky on last week's episode, kind of the turmoil going on there. What questions do they have to answer? What's up with Mark Pope and kind of the vague answers he's been giving lately? All kinds of rumors all over social media now because of his vague answers, because of Kentucky's struggles, because of incidents between teammates which have been caught on camera and been discussed on broadcasts. There is just not the consistency and camaraderie that we expect from a Mark Pope program so far from this team. And they have plenty of time to get the ship righted, but you talk about teams that have disappointed so far. They have not looked very competitive in either of their two early challenges. They've lost both of those against top 25 teams. They've had other issues that are apparently popping up that Mark Pope has not really addressed very clearly. So there's a lot of unknown. Injuries have also kind of hampered the start to their season. So something that they're going to have to get rolling here and get figured out if they're going to get things pointed towards being a contender, being that top 15 type team that we thought that they were, a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. If they're going to get back on that path, they've got to start turning it around and get going here as we enter December. Only a month left to build up your non-con resume. Mississippi State, another SEC team, disappointing. Mississippi State has been a team under Chris Jans that you could kind of just pencil into the right side of the bubble in the NCAA tournament conversation. And this year, It just hasn't looked quite right. I know that they lost Keyshawn Murphy in the transfer portal. I know that they lost some key pieces off of that roster last year, but Josh Hubbard is still a very good college basketball point guard, somebody who can get buckets for you. They just haven't had the pieces around him to this point. They have not clicked together. Some uh, head scratching losses on their resume already to this point that leave you wondering, are they going to survive the SEC schedule? They've got some more time to figure it out, but this is not a conference where you can play around, where you can take until the end of January to figure things out. By that point, you might be dead in the water with the list of opponents you're going to have to face over the first month of conference play. And finally, as we wrap up this segment, do want to touch just on Rutgers and losing to Central Connecticut State. It's ugly there. Look, Peichel had Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper last year, did not do very much with it. That roster around them was just not good enough. The injuries that those two had that kept them off the floor together for large chunks of the season obviously hurt them in a major way in their pursuit of an NCAA tournament bid, but just could not ever get things going. And this year, there was not a lot of optimism that they were going to suddenly get it going, but to lose to Central Connecticut State is a low point here. And then they had to go to the Players Era Festival where they did not do much to change any perception, losing both games there. Now it's going to be difficult to turn this around. Big Ten play is nothing to sneeze at either. It's going to be a long road ahead for this Rutgers program. Interested to see how the rest of this season plays out. Boise State, look, they've only got one loss on the schedule, or had one. Excuse me, I think that they've lost the second game since then. But to lose to a non-Division One program to start the season just came absolutely out of nowhere for a team that was on the bubble coming into this year, at least according to preseason expectations. Going to be very interesting to see how that comes back to haunt them once we get into those bubble resume comparisons. I know it doesn't go on the quadrant system, but it has to hurt them to take a loss to a team that's not even in the quadrant formula. That is never supposed to happen in the game of college basketball, particularly with the team that had NCAA tournament hopes as an at-large team. Like, that's what they were shooting for. That seems like it's going to take a lot of work to get back to that point. When we come back on the other side, we'll do a couple of Q&As, a mailbag segment to wrap up this Thanksgiving episode of Three True Values. Welcome back in here as we wrap up today's episode of Three True Values. We've got some mailbag questions, just some of the things that you guys have been asking me over the past couple of weeks. We're going to do this every other week. So if you have questions about college basketball, about what we talk about on the show, about things that you've seen, prospects that you want me to touch on, go a little bit more in depth about, please continue to reach out. Anywhere that you can reach me is a great place to submit any questions you have. Today, we've got three that we're going to touch on. We're going to get through them quickly. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving. You guys are going about the course of your day. So we're going to start off with, is Troy an NCAA tournament team? This was submitted saying that, yes, they are an NCAA tournament team, and that barring injuries, will they make it? The answer to that question is a resounding maybe for two reasons. The first reason is because they're in the Sun Belt Conference, and unfortunately, the Sun Belt Conference is a one-bid league, and so it is going to take them winning their conference tournament to break into this field. That's just the reality of this. It's a hard path for these mid-major and low-major schools to get into the field, but it's how it works. So we cannot say definitively that a team like Troy is going to make the NCAA tournament field, especially this early in the season. We never know when they're going to hit some kind of rough patch, when they're going to have a skid of games that now leads to them having to play 3 days in a row at their conference tournament. Whatever the case is, there's a lot of basketball to be played, a lot of changes that are going to happen. Sunbelt also has some good teams. Like, it's not like they're going to be a cakewalk into the field that way through their conference tournament. They're going to have to face some real teams that are going to have something to say before they make their way, punch their ticket into the NCAA tournament. The other reason is because they have been wildly inconsistent. Now, they have played some really great games against some big competition, particularly that USC game. They took it down to the wire, they went to overtime. But they've also had a couple of losses, a couple of really close wins against low major competition. Opponents from conferences that are supposed to be worse than the Sun Belt. So it is a total mystery what you're going to get from this team at this point. If you see them in these big games and think, wow, that's a team that I want to pick on I got to write this down, got to jot this down. Potential upset pick from the 14 seed slot. I agree with you. Go ahead, make that note. But it's not a done deal for sure, because they've got a lot of other things to figure out, to fine tune, to perfect over the rest of this season if they are going to be that type of team that we talk about with big upset potential from either that 13 or 14 slot, probably more the 14 slot, given what we've seen so far, where they would rank in the list of teams getting the conference tournament bids, the automatic bids so far. So that's where we stand on Troy. I wish I had a more definitive answer to that question, but they've been a roller coaster so far, and beyond the roller coaster, it's also just so hard to make any definitive answers about a mid-major conference. How good is Kingston Fleming? So good that I have moved him into the lottery of the 2026 class based on my latest big board. My big board behind the scenes, of course, which continues to shift around. I really like his game. I think that he gets downhill very well. We've talked with Jamie Shaw in the past about how impressive that he is. He was the number 1 point guard in the rivals class, just edged out Mikel Brown. So that tells you what kind of pedigree he was bringing into this season. And everyone knew that he was coming in as a 5-star kid to Houston. He was going to have an impact. But at least I thought that that impact was going to come more so behind Milos Uzan, which would limit his ability to showcase his full skill set, would give him time, honestly, to develop some of these skills as a secondary ball handler. Work a little bit off the ball, work a little bit as the backup point guard, get into the game, get into the season, and kind of progress down the line. He has had an immediate impact, though. He has come in and become the engine that makes this team go. Uzan's still playing really well, which I think says a lot about Kingston Fleming, because you can play him next to another ball handler. You don't have to play him completely off the ball. I think both of these guards have risen their stock in my eyes by being able to play complementary with each other. If the other guy has the ball in his hand and it's his turn to go, these guys can space the floor. They can create space. They can move into the right holes. They don't make the offense stick just because they're off the ball. They don't go stand in the corner and now the possession is over for them. They're just going to stand there. Everyone else is going to kind of try to shift around. No, that's not what happens. These guys are within the offense. They are moving off the ball. They're playing really well in complementary roles when they aren't being the guy in that exact moment. So for Fleming, stock through the roof in terms of what he does. It's the ability to me to decel, because we know that he's an athlete. He gets downhill, he gets past his defender, but then he decelerates. And that is important. The decel is something that we talk about with guards. Can you go from boom, I'm around the perimeter defender with the top speed that I have, got by him, but now I've got to stop, because if I keep going full speed, I'm going to hit this center. We're going to get a charge. If I go full speed at this point, I'm not going to be able to see the corners properly. I can't kick the ball back out. So to decel very quickly and maintain his vision, he understands where his teammates are. He understands where the center is. That second line of defense, he's now reached it, and he can now make a decision because he was able to stop at the right point and with speed. But then to re-accelerate, I don't even know if that's a word, but it's the word I'm going to use here because he gets back up to speed. He decelerates, and then the next decision comes so quickly. He can decelerate. The center is now at his level, and now, boom, one more quick step, and he's by that guy too. So he's hitting two guys with this move. He gets past the point guard with it. Decelerate, now hit the center with it. Now he's to the rim. He's got a couple of creative finishes that we've seen him make already this season. But it's not just creating his own shot. He's done that really well. He's been really efficient. But it's also, once you decel, he makes that next decision quickly, as I said. If that means getting it to the corner, that ball gets to the corner in a hurry. It's not drag the pivot foot, turn, look, bring the ball to the side, and then throw the pass. No, it is stop, and then boom, the decision is made, the ball is there. That is so important as a point guard, particularly as he gets to the next level. These gaps are going to close and close and close, and he's going to have to make those decisions quick. He is able to do that. The question for him, can he continue to shoot this well from three? Because that is helping him not only to play off the ball, but is helping him to keep these defenders honest. He's able to get by these defenders because they have to close out to him because he's shooting the ball well. Can he continue to keep that 3-point percentage high? That is going to matter down the stretch. And finally, teased it in the last segment, is Gonzaga the best team in basketball? The computers probably say so at this point. They have probably the second best resume in the country, right behind Arizona. Really deep group. I like what they have. I think that at the big position with Ike and Huff, I think that they've got a little bit more talent behind them, but not that has been used so far. So that's going to be something to watch if they have to dip into their bigs more. What does that look like? But I think they've got enough wing help that they can go small if they really needed to for certain stretches with Steel Venters, with Inocente, with just all of the depth that they bring off that bench. Jalen Warley, another one of these 6'7" guys on the team. Really like what they've been able to do. And then in the backcourt, Mario Saint-Supéry has been, I think, better than I thought he would be. I thought he was going to come in and have an impact, but to be in that starting lineup, to already be kind of running this team, helping get them into things, has been really encouraging. Braden Smith also in the mix for them in some point guard minutes. I think that this team is really good. I think it's really deep, and I don't think that it's deep in that there's one or two guys who make it go and then everyone else is the same. I think that they have got real ability to rotate through and play different lineups. I think they can go 8 or 9 deep, and you aren't worried about anyone who's on the floor saying, oh yeah, they've got 4 guys, but there's the one who they need to go get buckets isn't out there. That happens a lot of times. If there was a guy who would be like that, I would say it's probably Ike, just because he brings them something different, a more interior physical presence that they don't get from anyone else. But like I said, I think that they've got options. They've got alternatives in the minutes that they have to go without him. So this Gonzaga team, really, really good. Not quite ready to say a definitive number one because I think that we've got a big chunk of teams at the top of college basketball right now, but something to monitor throughout the season. They could very well establish themselves as that, as Mark Few again builds a really good team that could be a national championship contender there at Gonzaga. I want to thank everyone once again for tuning into this Thanksgiving episode. Hope you enjoy. Hope you come back with us next week. We've got a great lineup for you. On Tuesday, we're going to talk about NBA draft coverage. On Thursday, we will be covering all things college basketball. We'll have plenty of big-time matchups to break down. Plenty of news, I'm sure, along the way as well. Right here on 3 True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher. So thankful for you guys tuning in.